Hi there, everyone. This is Sharon from the Self-Care You podcast. I'm your number one host, the Self-Caregiver. And so this is the intersection of self-care, advocacy, and companion for the self-caregivers. And this episode is a lovely. We have a lovely guest for this episode. And you are going to be in for a treat with our lovely guest, Athena. Hi there. One
Hi.
thing I will say, this lady here, you guys are in for a treat. This lady is so wonderful. and and she is going to tell you how you can get well. But before we get into all of that, Athena, tell us about yourself.
Awesome. Well, Sharon, it's such a pleasure to be on your show this morning. And again, to the listening audience, my name is Athena Callender, and I am the owner and founder of Restoring Wealth and Wellness. And I am on a soul-led mission to help inspire the lives of women who are faith-based. I'm talking about CEOs and other corporate executives and those that are on their entrepreneurial path and looking to make a difference through wellness and herbs. And essentially the work that I do is helping to lighten them up, inside out. And through that, it's really about returning back to Mother Nature through nutrition. And that's been my saving grace. And also learning how to create the life of your dreams, heaven on earth. And so that's the work that I do. And I'm so happy to be here, partnered with Sharon to really talk to you about ways that you can heal your mind, your body, and your soul, and to really take that leap of faith and to create the life of your dreams. So happy to be here.
But thank you for all of that. So tell us, how do you get onto this path yourself of nutrition and just living the life that you really want to live?
Sure. So my background, I've been a corporate sales executive leader for over 25 years. And throughout that journey, I'm so grateful for all of the highs and the lows through that. But I suffered from depression, from bipolar disorder. I was also overweight. I was about 200 pounds at certain times throughout my journey, was very low energy. And I found myself, to be honest, fired from almost every corporate job that I've held. And so I knew that something had to give. And so my background, I was raised in the Christian church. And so I learned about faith and tithing from a young age and, was saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost. But deep down inside, I had suffered from different types of trauma, from young, having major back surgery at the age of 12 and suffering from low self-confidence and, really having a lot of anger and resentment inside. So it was kind of eating away at me. And I really didn't have the outlet at the time to be able to heal. So again, throughout my career in corporate, I realized that there was something greater within, and that's why I got fired because I'm just like, this is just not for me. Even though I worked at Bank of America as a manager, Santander as a financial specialist, I worked at New York Life Insurance Company selling insurance, even Mary Kay Cosmetics, but still it just wasn't my thing. And so it was just all about really getting into alignment with my soul's purpose. And how that came to be was when I realized that I had to heal myself at the root. And so as I went on this quest to heal myself at the root, I had to unpack a lot of trauma. And so that's the work that I do, is helping women to break free from generational and ancestral trauma. And so I had to return back to Mother Nature. And so as you can see here, I have my book here on apple cider vinegar, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But really, I had to transition from a meat-centered diet to a whole food plant-based diet. And so while I was working in my corporate career, I got married in 2012, and I was the breadwinner for my family. My last corporate career, I was the number one sales director, earning multiple six figures, but I was burnt out and my soul was literally dead and my womb was closed. I wanted to get pregnant, but I wasn't able to conceive at that time because of the stress. I was drinking, I was smoking, I was extremely toxic. And so needless to say, I knew that something had to give. And so I made radical shifts to my life. And so I had learned about Dr. Sebi, Dr. Layla Africa. I learned about the power of plants. I ended up getting a certification from E. Cornell, from T. Colin Campbell, and I started my process of that transition. And then additionally, I started working with crystal technology. So you could see here, my daughter, she makes crystal jewelry. So I have like amethyst crystal here. But needless to say, there's different ways that you can heal mind, body, and soul. And so that's what I was able to do for myself, Sharon. So with all that, I was able to lose 70 pounds. I reversed allergies, asthma, bipolar disorder. And this all happened around 2020, when we had the global sickness and the whole pandemic and the whole shutdown. And so that's really when I started my great awakening. That's when I ended up leaving my last corporate career. I got fired in the fall of 2020. And that's when I came back to myself by joining a healing circle in Boston. And then the rest is history. I went on my pilgrimage and just learned about different healing modalities with TCM, with meditation, with grounding practices, learning more about herbalism. And so now that's what I'm teaching, are these ancient philosophies and ways that people can level up mind, body, and soul energetically. So I know that was a lot, so I'll turn it over to you to see what other questions you have.
Well, definitely. I really appreciate you sharing all of that. Because one thing I really liked about what you just shared, you shared some very intimate aspects of yourself, but it's one of those things. I don't want to say like to the extreme, but let's say to the extreme, or where someone, who's suffering, who may not have any hope, but through that, you were able to not just transition, but transform to where you are now. And if anything, I want the audience to hear not only that there's work, but I want them to hear the work, not only that there's hope, but the work that has to go with it. Because I think that people miss that part because they want the end result, but they don't realize the work. But it's possible. It's possible and it's rewarding as well. And so, if anything, I want people to know, definitely your story, what you've gone through, but where you are and where you're going, And I just think that that is just so wonderful. And so, one question that I have, because you were talking about like being in the corporate world and like where you were, and it kind of just made me think, because I even think about myself, because like I'm a mental health professional, and what I've come to realize, there are certain parts of myself that I didn't even realize. And so let's just say, like I put it like this: we can be toxic to ourselves and not even know it. So how can women or anyone, how are they able to even identify that there's parts of themselves that needs to be worked on? It doesn't mean that anything, like wrong, because I think that's what stops people to even think about it. But it's needed, because one thing that I say is, like, I grew up without a father, and to be honest, I always thought that, one, it allowed me to be able to accomplish things in life, not to be a statistic in certain ways. But what I come to realize, oh my, I really do experience or have fatherless daughter syndrome. Oh my, there are some fatherly wounds that I just recently discovered that I have, and I see how it shows up in relationship with men. And so, my question again is kind of like, how can we be honest with ourselves, even if we don't see it, but that we need to work on ourselves?
I love that. What I call that is shadow work. And so, what that shadow work looks like is when you find yourself triggered, when you find yourself in a situation where somebody's doing something and it's pushing a button like,
Mm-hmm.
because we're all mirrors one to another. You know what I mean? And so when we're out in the world, it's kind of like, what are you projecting? What's coming off? And then as things are coming off, how are you internalizing that thing? And so when that thing is disruptive on the inside, that's when you're either going to act out, or you could get mad or have an angry outburst, or you could cry, or you could pull back, and so this is an opportunity to do some introspective work, shadow work. And this is where I encourage people to do the practice of journaling. And that's what I advise with my clients, a form of psychotherapy, if you will. And so if something is going on, you have the opportunity to say, what is it about this person that I don't like, and what do I recognize in myself? And just really asking yourself those questions, but then taking the time to really explore those answers without judgment. And then finding somebody that you could talk to, whether you have a spiritual leader, or a therapist, or somebody in your life that you could talk to. But that a piece again is that shadow work. And so it's just like you had mentioned, not having your father, thinking in a way, there's no issues per se, but then certain things come up and says, well, wait a minute, and so just being aware. And I think that's the most important thing, is having what's called like emotional intelligence, your EQ, so just, being cognizant, and not being afraid of those uncomfortable emotions, but rather taking a moment to understand, well, what's happening, like, what I mean? You just got to be aware of your now moment, and then try to understand what the root is, where that's coming from, and then figure out ways to nourish yourself in those areas.
Yes, yes, and that is really important. And that's what self-care is all about. That's one of the reasons that I've become more of an advocate for it, and trying to teach people, different ways of how to do it and expose them to it as well, because there's so many ways of how you can take care of yourself. And if anything, that I've come to the realization of, no matter who we are, where we are, I always like to say, whether we degree or not, meaning having a degree, or whether we're working in corporations or wherever you are, we all experience something and it impacts us. And, just like you were saying, when we're triggered, I've said the same thing too. And when you're working through it at the time, you may not really realize it and want to really point the finger. And not to say that people aren't actually saying and doing things, not to say that that's not happening, because I do believe in duality, that they both can be true. But the thing is, at the end of the day, if something is triggering us, we need to look deep within ourselves. So, because we know, because that's pretty much, it's a sign. It's just a sign to know there's some emotional imprint that's there, and to go and find out what that was or what that is, so that we can nurture ourselves, so that it won't be, so we won't be triggered, so that even if someone is saying or doing something, or not saying or doing something, because sometimes it's the lack of. And this is where, even in life, for some of us, with motherly or fatherly wounds, is sometimes it's the things that were not done, that we didn't get, is where some of our wounds come from as well. And so sometimes that can be, I kind of call it an invisible projection on others, because sometimes we may not even realize that we're expecting it or wanting it or yearning it from others as well. But yeah, I really do love all of that. And so I want to hear a little bit more about, like, some of the different things or ways of how you were able, to transform yourself, and how people, especially on a nutritional basis, of how they can get better.
I love that. So for me, when I started to transition, what was most important is to eat all superfoods. I said, let me do an experiment and what would happen if I just ate superfoods? And so that's what I said I'm going to do. And so listening to Dr. Sabi, he talked about the importance of taking sea moss, which has 92 out of the 102 minerals that the body needs. And he talked about burdock root, which is high in iron, and it also helps to clean out the blood. And he talked about burdock root, which is also another form of algae, which is loaded with lots of minerals, and it has the healthy minerals for the gut. And so I started to take those, Sharon, in addition to drinking, alive water, like alkaline water. I started taking more legumes like garbanzo beans. I started making more curry dishes with turmeric. So a lot of the spices can be used as medicine, like ginger, for an example. And then I learned about apple cider vinegar. And Hippocrates, who's the father of medicine, treated his patients in 400 AD with ACV. And so there's a lot of minerals that a lot of us are missing intercellularly. And then as a result, we're suffering from a lot of deficiencies. And so, especially in the African American communities as it relates to high blood pressure, obesity, cancer, kidney disease. A lot of this can be rectified with a whole food plant-based diet and lifestyle changes. You know what I mean? Because a lot of us are just not moving. We're just kind of sitting on our butts, couch potatoes, and so it's important that we're moving our bodies. A body in motion stays in motion, and so part of the work that I've done, and as I mentioned, having major back surgery at the age of 12, having 2 Harrington rods in my spine, I realized as I was getting older, I'm starting to kind of hunch over, and I'm having a lot of pain in my knees and all this type of thing. And that was attributed to the weight that I was carrying. But then I started to learn about different yoga practices, like the 5 Tibetan rites. That's a 2,500 year old ancient practice known as the Fountain of Youth. And so it's not like I have to do some headstands or something crazy, but I found different restorative practices that have allowed me to regain flexibility, mobility. I can pretty much bend down and touch my toes. I have more energy now than I've had. I can't even tell you, and it's just like I'm sleeping better, I'm feeling better, and it's all due to this holistic lifestyle and the fact that I've removed, high inflammatory foods, pardon me, from my diet. And I don't necessarily say that you have to do one way or the other. I'm a conscious eater. I do consume ants and crickets. They're loaded with zinc. So for me, it just has to make sense. And so understanding that we're electromagnetic beings, we're light beings. It's important that we eat light foods. And so that's where the phytonutrients come in. A lot of the plants like kale, the dandelion greens, which are loaded with lots of vitamin K, which is good for women. We need to work on our bone health. And again, overall with the skin, the third largest organ on our body, so I put all natural products on my temple, like aloes, and even with the ACV. And so, that's really what I recommend. And then also growing your own food, just finding ways that you can make your own medicine and heal thyself. And so that's really what I preach and teach. And that's what I've been able to do for myself.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And just so that people can have a really good understanding, because some people just may not know, they may have heard the word, but what are superfoods?
Superfoods. So superfoods are foods that are super. They're foods that are loaded with lots of antioxidants. These are foods that are loaded, like for an example, cacao. It's a superfood. It has 40 times more antioxidants than blueberries. Blueberries also a superfood, but there's levels to the superfood. And so essentially it has a lot of the minerals, the vitamins that your body needs. And it's something that is important to incorporate so that you're looking and feeling your best. And there's all different types of superfoods, even some grains like quinoa, superfood, sea moss, superfood, like I mentioned with the cacao. And so, And so that's one of the things that I look to source, are those types of products to put in my body, because again, God is inside of us, the creative spark of life. And so, our bodies are the temple, so it's important that we maintain our temple the best that we can, by putting in the most, the absolute best things, in our bodies, because each cell needs oxygen, it needs hydration, it just needs life. And if we're not giving it that, then what we find is a lot of blockages, a lot of inflammation. This is where we see people having strokes. The heart's not, the blood's not moving properly through the body. And the blood is our river of life. So we got to make sure we keep our blood clean.
Yes, most definitely. And thank you for that, because I just wanted to make sure that our audience just had that understanding, because some people, like hear certain words, but they just may not know what it means. And one thing that I will say too, and that I enjoy that you're talking about, is just how powerful that food really is medicine, and I'm pretty much at a place, where people, when they're dealing with things, I really encourage people, like just like you may be taking a medication, and hopefully you're doing the research on that, go ahead and do the same thing when it comes to food. Food has always been there, and granted, some people may need need medication, but one thing I can say, other than someone may have an allergy, when it comes to something, food doesn't have the side effect, that medication. I'm not sure if there's any medication that has no side effect, you know what I mean? And so, yeah. And so, even though, like in the medical world, they'll say, oh, well, the benefits outweigh the side effects, but who really gets to judge that? Because, the doctors or whoever is the prescriber is not the one living. And there are some side effects that is just too much for people. And then there's another medication for the side effect, and and there's so many different things. And I know that people sometimes may feel like they've done everything. And I've even discovered, even within myself, when it came to a certain medical condition, did I really do everything? The only thing I can say is I did everything that I knew at that time. But as I'm learning more, I'm like, oh, it wasn't everything. And so definitely listen to people, who have said that they have done this or that in order to be well, because of the fact, there's so many different ways, of really being well and living the life that you want. So let's talk a little bit more about that, because that's something that you did say in the introduction, of how people can live the life that they want to live, like you say, in their life, be a part of. You might have didn't say all of that, but that's how I felt. It made me feel that way. So let's talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great segue, because in order to want change, it starts in the mind. And so that's really what this is all about, is that vision. What is the mental picture that you have for yourself? What is that identity that you relate to? And so a lot of people have broken identities. They relate with, what their somebody negative said about them, you'll never be this, or you're only as good as that, or, what I mean, or you're sick, so you're always going to be diabetic. And so you just stick with this frame of this is it. And so one of the things that I teach people is how we got to shift that, how we have to reprogram our subconscious mind. And about 90% of what we do is based upon the subconscious. And so how do we do that? And so that comes in with the meditative practice, that comes in with the journaling, that comes in with very specific meditations that I prescribed, also helping to balance out the chakras, and because everything is everything. But again, with creating the life of your dreams, you got to be able to see this thing, really starting with the end in mind. What legacy is it that you want to leave behind? And so then we start there, and then we reverse engineer, coming back down to today. What steps do you have to take to make this dream a reality? So I encourage people to start to imagine, start to dream, and start to feel what it would be like if, what I mean, whatever, what I mean, because that's what the Bible says. It's according to your faith, be it done unto you. But the Bible also says that to be be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. So we have to continue to renew our mind so that we can be transformed and to recognize who we are inside out. I am, God is inside looking to create. So what is it that you're here to do? And so that's what I help people to see, Sharon, is that we all have our own unique blueprint. We all have our uniqueness, so what is it about us and why is it that we came back here this lifetime? And what is it that we're here to do? So it's again all about finding your purpose. And so how I do that is by helping my clients draw that out through very specific questioning. And then in doing so, I help them to be able to create a vision board so that they can now see this thing. And then I teach them how to be able to manifest through the law of attraction, where less is more. We're not forcing this thing, but now you become this thing, and everything that you wants you back. And so that's what I help people to kind of unleash for themselves, if you will, because there's all this internal force within just wanting to come on out. But again, there's blockages through the beliefs that we have and such. And so once we can get into divine alignment, which is what I help my clients to do through my programming, is to just get back into balance. And but again, it's all returning back to Mother Nature, and returning back to a holistic way of being and doing, not this Western, go rat race society. It's about going back to the ways of the ancients, where less is more.
Yes, most definitely. And pretty much with everything that you just said, it pretty much leads into what I say and how I feel and think about when it comes to self-care. It's all about us taking care of ourselves, taking the steps, and it requires work. One thing that I've come to realize, like when it comes to the mental health system, it's not intentional, but I believe that it's a subliminal message, is that go to therapy, and that when you go to therapy, everything will be okay. And what you just described is the work that needs to be done. It's like you can have really good insight and it can make you feel better. And it does a lot for a lot of people, but not for everyone. But even for those individuals that may have done a lot with, you still got to do something. And I like to say, like on a daily basis, in taking care of yourself, when it comes to all of that. And that pretty much also leads into our sponsor, which is Self-Care You on Shopify. And so you may have seen me drink from my lovely cup. And then also we have t-shirts as being a self-caregiver. And this is what this is all about. So make sure you go to Self-Care You on Shopify to purchase any of my products. And there's new products coming in as well. And so back to our conversation, as I was saying, is that I don't think that people may think that it's hard. It's kind of like, yeah, when the stuff from life comes down, that's the hard part. But when we're taking care of ourselves and eating, like I've been plant based like for the past 2 years. And one thing, and I'm still discovering, I mean, I don't know all of this, but one thing I like about it, it allows me to be curious and to explore, because some people view it as, I don't know, like something is being taken away from them. But I'm like, no. If anything, when it comes to, seasoning and the herbs, I would say it allows you to explore those more, because yeah, I would say, yeah, with certain things it needs a little bit more. But that's what food is all about anyway, even before you became that. But it really does. And, one thing I like about, everything that you're talking about, you talk about it in a way that I feel that people that can resonate with people, but because it's almost like, yeah, what dream do I want? For all of us. And to be honest, we never, on an average, there may be some families that really talk about it, but on an average, we don't. Because even when I think about my career, I knew like what I wanted to do and where I want to work and who, but as of like where I am now, I didn't think about it in that way. But I think that's so important for young ones and for us to do this, on a regular basis, because it really helps us. Because one, we change over time, we evolve. So something that we may have thought about, even yesterday, 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, may not be the same. But one thing I will say, the theme may not be the same, but usually the theme, or there's some core essence of us that still remains in there. I think that that's really, is something that really doesn't get removed. But in living in the Western world, the way that things are, we get lost and forget who we truly are. So I love, everything about you, and just allowing people, I guess you could say, to find their true selves, where they can live, not just, I like to say, live in joy, where they can live in joy, be healthy, and be well.
And that's it. It's just that easy. But again, we make it more complicated than what it has to be. It's just a matter of surrendering. And it's about picking up good habits, replacing a bad habit with a good habit. And once you have good habits, the good habits is what leads to the health, the wealth, the abundance, the success, the fulfillment, the joy, the bliss, you name it. And so it's like, but it just starts with one. So what's the one thing you can do? So what I'd like to encourage those that are listening and those that'll be viewing is to start off with drinking 1/2 of your body weight in alkaline water per day. So let me help you. If you're 200 pounds, that'll be 100 ounces. So let me help you a little bit more. In a liter of water, there's 33.8 ounces, right? And so if you take 100 and you divide it by 33, right? It's about 3. So that would be about 3 liters. So if you're 200 pounds, you need 3 liters of water a day, all right? And then again, it's just 1/2 of your body weight. And so what I encourage is you to purchase alkaline water. All right. At Whole Foods, there's a brand that's called Mountain Valley Spring. And this is what I used to buy until I invested in a water ionizer machine. But you can start there because we're water beings. About 70% of our body is made up of water, and a lot of us are dehydrated. So if you're looking to have immediate relief, more clarity, you want to be able to move your bowels and not be, all jammed up. I'm going to help you today. If you want clearer skin, have more water. You want to have sharper memory, more focus, water. You don't want your skin to be itchy, no more eczema, water. So just start there, even with lowering your blood pressure, lowering your cholesterol levels, water, and it helps with the heart. So it's something you need for all of your metabolic processes. And so that's one thing. And then also too, family, the ACV. So one of the things that I encourage is you to take your apple a day, 1 to 3 tablespoons of ACV. And that would go into like maybe an 8 to 16 ounce cup of water. What I recommend is definitely to warm it. A lot of my clients prefer it warm. For me, I'm like diehard, so I'll just have it room temperature or cold. Rather room temperature. I really don't have too much beverage that's cold, but start there. And if you have any questions, you can always find me online. I'm always available to be a resource. AthenaCallender.com and Facebook, Athena Callender.
And thank you very much. And I'm pretty sure, put it like this, that this is a perfect lesson of why water is so important. We always hear about that. And sometimes I think people may not truly understand how important it is. And if you can at least start off, like you say, one thing a day, you know, start off with water, which is the easiest thing. Now, let me ask you this, because sometimes for some people, like, oh, well, I don't like the taste of water. It doesn't taste good. I mean, what would you say about that?
Sure, I get that a lot from my clients. And so what I recommend is to infuse your water. So you could add lemons, you could add limes. The water does not have to be plain. You could also add like some herbs like sorrel, for an example, hibiscus, to infuse the water. But otherwise, it's something that is necessary for life. You know, I mean, we can't just live off of soda and coffee and juice, you know. And I want to just quickly show, because I have a plant here, and I'm a plant mama, and I have so many house plants. But anyway, look at yourself like a plant. So what happens if a plant doesn't get enough water? You know, if you don't water your plant in 1 day, 2 days, what happens? This plant's going to start to dry up. It's going to start to shrivel up. So what do you think is happening internally when you're not getting water into your body? You know what I mean? And so it's just very important. Again, as we are electromagnetic beings, you know, it's important that we put the right vitamins, the right minerals, everything right. We need sunlight, vitamin D, but then we need, again, that H2O, H2O3, coconut water, alkaline water, spring water, and then also bless your water. And there's something I'd like to leave with you too. There's a Japanese scientist, Dr. Emoto, who talked about the science of water memory. And so what he would do is speak to water, and then he would freeze the water to look at the crystals. And so if you speak love to the crystal, it comes a beautiful geometric pattern. But if you spoke hate or fear, that geometric pattern would look crazy. And so again, you know, where we are water beings, you could speak to your water. I am love. I am blessed. I am whole. I am abundant. I am peace. I am joy. I am love. And so shall it be. And then you drink. And so again, different ways that you can heal yourself through your words, through hydration, through having your apple a day. And that's a great start on your spiritual healing transformational journey. And then again, any additional support, any questions, I'm always happy to be a resource. And I do provide complimentary holistic consultations.
Thank you for sharing that. And even just by you saying that regarding the water and what we can do with our food, it kind of reminds me, what is said, even like when it comes to animals, like whatever the animal has gone through, for those who eat meat, you're ingesting that. So meaning that if the animal has, experienced any type of trauma, especially before it got to your plate, you know what I'm saying? That sometimes you may not realize, some of the things that you may be going through. I put it like this, have the history of that animal. And so that's just something to keep in mind if it's also in water and in our food as well. And that's something to really, for people to think about. And so before we end, is there anything else you'd like the audience to know?
I would say absolutely. I just want you to know that there's always hope, that there's always a new moment for you to make a new decision. You know, you don't have to be in the same space. You know what I mean? You always have the ability to shapeshift. And I also want to let you know to be more fluid, with some of the choices and things in life. Be okay letting go and trying something new. Because oftentimes we hold on to things too long. And it kind of is like on the river of life, there's different branches, so as the stream keeps going, we're still holding on to a thing, so sometimes we just got to let go and trust, what's to come, because oftentimes it's a lot greater than what is or what has been. So I just encourage you to be cognizant about what it is that you want into your life, because where your attention goes, your energy flows. All right. And so start with the end in mind. What life do you want to create for yourself? What legacy do you want to leave behind? And then what step can you take today to make it happen? And that first step, start to hydrate, and start to think more positively about your situations, because life is all about perception of a thing. Is your glass half empty or is your glass half full? I pray that your glass is half full this day and going forward. Again, my name is Athena Callender, Coach T, and I thank Sharon for having me on, and I look forward to connecting with the listening audience.
Thank you for all of this, Athena. And it has definitely been a pleasure with you being here. And I know that the audience have a lot to take in. And if anything, you give them hope. And so for everyone, remember to tune in into Self-Care You on Anchor and Spotify, and also on YouTube. And again, I really do appreciate you being a part of the show.
I appreciate you too, Sharon. Thank you. Have a great day, family.